Sup everyone, let's get into today's story. Hope you enjoy it, and let me know what you think. The story begins with a fierce battle. Deep in the forest, hunters struggle against goblins. Their formation is breaking apart, their teamwork failing. The goblins push forward, overwhelming them. At the rear, Dong-hun stands still, hooded, silent and watching. Unlike the others, he isn't panicking. He simply lifts his staff. An explosion erupts. A warrior turns, his voice filled with urgency. "Necromancer, help us." Dong-hun doesn't hesitate. As a mercenary, refusing isn't an option. With a calm expression, he raises his staff, chanting a spell. 3 skeletons rise from the ground, their hollow eyes glowing faintly. Without delay, they charge into battle, slicing through the goblins with precise, calculated movements. The battle shifts. The once panicked hunters finally catch their breath. One of them watches in awe and mutters, "Wait, is this the necromancer everyone's been talking about?" Another responds, shocked. "I didn't expect to see him in such a low-ranked dungeon. If he ever awakens, he'll definitely become a ranker." Dong-hun hears them, but he already knows what they don't. Necromancer, a class so rare that only 10,000 exist out of nearly 8 million people. But what they don't realize is that he's cursed. He can only summon skeletons. A warrior scoffs. "Skeletons? That's the weakest summon a necromancer can use." His comrade shrugs. Maybe he's just proving that skeletons alone are enough for an E-rank dungeon. Dong-hun doesn't react. Are they envious, or are they mocking him? He is just a cursed E-rank necromancer. Of course, he can do everything that other necromancers can do, but he is cursed, so he can only summon skeletons. 10 years ago, people began awakening unique abilities when they turned 20. These abilities were completely random. Some gained skills in blacksmithing or tailoring, while others received support abilities like scouting, healing, and buffs. Because these abilities were given by pure luck, not everyone was happy with them. However, thanks to these powers, humanity managed to survive the monster invasion, and in the end, he became a necromancer, a class that others admired, one that everyone envied. Either way, it doesn't matter. His skeletons stand victorious over the goblin corpses. The warriors cheer, relieved, but Dong-hun simply sighs. They don't understand. No matter how much he trains, his skeletons will always be E-rank. After clearing the dungeon, Dong-hun returns to the mercenary guild and reports the completion of his job. His reward? 40,000 won. A pitiful amount for the risks he takes every day. He could make more working part-time at a store, but this is the only thing he wants to do. As he steps outside, he glances up at a giant screen on a building where an announcer shares breaking news. The Dark Lord, who cleared the Moon Rift, has become a ranker in just 3 years. South Korea now has 37 rankers, second only to the United States. The crowd cheers. Dong-hun clenches his fists. The Dark Lord. He awakened his ability on the same day as me. Now, he's a ranker. And me? A cursed necromancer stuck summoning skeletons. He grits his teeth. Why was I the one cursed? That night he heads deep into the forest to train. He summons his skeletons and orders them to attack the training dummies. Bone 1 wields a sword. Bone 2 a spear. Bone 3 a bow. They've improved. Once they struggled against goblins. Now they can take on 3 at once. But that's it. No matter how much effort he puts in, their rank never increases. Dong-hun exhales slowly. This is my limit. Suddenly, a deep sigh echoes behind him. His instincts flare. A massive orc steps out of the darkness. The system instantly warns. A strong enemy has appeared. All skeleton stats reduced by 20%. Dong-hun's heartbeat quickens. An orc? Here? That means a dungeon break has occurred. The orc raises its axe. Dong-hun orders his skeletons to block. Bone 1 moves first, but with a single devastating swing, the orc sends him flying. Bone 2 collapses the next second. The system forcefully recalls them. Dong-hun curses and turns to run. Only Bone 3 remains, rapidly firing arrows to slow the enemy down. One shot strikes the orc's head, making it pause for a moment. Dong-hun grits his teeth. Even with a cursed ability, he refuses to die here. His energy is running low, only 70 left. He keeps summoning skeletons, using them as distractions while he escapes. But the orc refuses to stop. It keeps chasing him. Then, his energy is depleted. The system alerts him. Energy depleted. To recover, you must rest. Dong-hun stares at the message, disbelief washing over him. Rest? Now? The orc swings its axe at full force. Dong-hun barely dodges, his breath ragged. He clenched his fists, thinking he couldn't die here. Not like this. Just then, a notification appeared in front of him. The system advised him to check the message about reaching certain conditions. He noticed that the message had been there for a while but had no chance to check it. But now, with no other options left, he opened it. The system window read that he had fulfilled a hidden condition and received a unique ability. A golden glow enveloped his body, and the system announced that his rank would now increase to D rank. More rewards related to his advancement would appear soon. Dong-hun's heart pounded. He desperately pleaded with the system to give him something, anything. At that moment, the orc lunged forward, ready to strike. Just as the attack was about to land, the system announced that his energy had been replenished. Now, he could summon D-rank skeletons. The same golden glow surrounded his undead. Bone 1 stepped forward and deflected the orc's axe. Dong-hun's eyes widened. His skeletons had changed. Their power had grown. Realizing this, he grinned for the first time. He decided to test his new ability. With a wide smile, he summoned Bone 4 and 5. The system selected their weapons. Bone 4 wielded a shield, and Bone 5 carried a magic staff. Dong-hun was stunned. His skeletons now had specialized weapons. Bone 1, 2, and 3 stood ready beside them. Now, he had a balanced team. Bone 4 stepped forward, raising his shield. The orc, noticing this, smirked before swinging his axe. But this time, the attack was too weak. The axe slipped from the orc's hands. Realizing something was wrong, the orc looked up. Above him, a massive fireball had formed. Bone 5 had cast it. The orc screamed as flames engulfed him. At that moment, Bone 2 thrust his spear forward, piercing the orc's throat. The enemy collapsed. Dong-hun gasped, still processing what had happened. The system reported that he had defeated a strong monster. For a moment, he thought he was about to die, but it seemed the world wasn't done with him yet. When he returned home, the first thing he did was eat. Then he studied his status window with a surprised expression on his face. He did not expect that his abilities could grow. Clenching his fist in excitement, he thought to himself, efforts should be rewarded. He didn't know when he would reach C rank, but he was still happy with what he had now. He needed to go back to the basics. The strength of the intermediate skeleton was already impressive, but what if they became even stronger? Would Bone 5 be able to unleash a snow blizzard? Would Bone 1 and Bone 3 become masters of the sword and spear? He had to find out. After a while, he headed to work. As soon as he stepped inside, he overheard 2 hunters discussing a quest. One of them muttered that this job might be a hassle. The insurance premium alone was high, and the danger fee should be 10 times the usual amount. With that kind of salary, he'd even volunteer to be a porter. It was a good chance to gain experience. Dong-hun's interest was piqued. Noticing the green badge on one of the hunter's belts, he realized that the man was C rank. What was a high-ranking hunter like him doing here? Before he could think more about it, the leader of the guild called out to him. He had big news. Sitting at the table, the leader asked, "Do you know about the Parang Guild, founded by Ji-rong?" Dong-hun nodded. Everyone in Korea knew about the prestigious guild, created by the ranker Ji-rong. A beautiful bow rested on the leader's table as he continued. "It looks like they're preparing to explore a new dungeon, and they need porters. The pay is 10 times the normal amount." Dong-hun's eyes widened. The leader smiled. "They're even accepting D ranks. To be honest, all the other job requests are garbage." Dong-hun thought for a moment, then said he'd first like to see what kind of dungeon it was. The leader nodded and showed him a map. The dungeon had appeared recently under Pooh. 5 teams had already failed to clear it. Dong-hun was even more surprised now. The leader continued. "The dungeon's rank hasn't been determined yet, but it's understandable why teams have failed. It was mostly newbies who attempted it. But this time, Parang is involved, so what could go wrong? Besides," he reminded Dong-hun, "you're just a porter. You don't even need to fight." He pulled out the contract and smiled. "Just do your job and get paid. Easy." Dong-hun remained silent, unsure of what to do. A reward 10 times the normal rate. That most likely meant the dungeon was dangerous. After his encounter with the orc yesterday, he was still mentally exhausted, but the opportunity was tempting. The Dark Lord had once said something in an interview. If you want to increase your rank faster, go to a dungeon above your level. There was no other way. Higher ranked dungeons carried greater risks, but also better rewards. After considering it, Dong-hun agreed to the job and signed the contract. The leader grinned, patting him on the back. You won't regret it. We leave in a week from Poo Station. Dong-hun handed over the signed contract and requested a week off. The leader agreed, saying he'd even treat him to a meal after the job. After that, Dong-hun went straight to the training ground. Summoning his skeletons, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. All his training was finally paying off. If they kept this up, they would only get stronger. And if that happened, he might even become a ranker. Crossing his arms with a smile, he ordered Bone 1 and Bone 3 to take their positions. The skeletons moved into place, then started showing off their skills. Bone 1 easily sliced a training dummy in half. Bone 2 pierced a hole straight through one. Bone 3 fired an arrow and it flew straight through 3 trees at once. Dong-hun was stunned. D rank. They were almost as strong as C ranks. He knew they had improved, but he didn't expect them to be this strong. Looking at the destroyed dummies, he realized something. His training equipment was no longer useful. Wooden dummies wouldn't cut it anymore. He'd have to spend more money on better gear. It was great that his skeletons had become stronger, but now the real problem was himself. What if a powerful opponent chose to target him instead of the skeletons? No matter how strong they were, it wouldn't matter if he couldn't survive. As he was lost in thought, Bone 5 suddenly walked toward him. Raising his staff, he pointed it at Dong-hun. For a second, Dong-hun tensed, his body stiffening. What was Bone 5 doing? Before he could react, the skeleton cast a spell. A stream of wind surrounded Dong-hun's body. His eyes widened. What just happened? Did he just respond to my thoughts? Bone 5 turned to face him, flashing a grin and giving him a thumbs up. Dong-hun stood frozen. Did he really just do that? Before, they had only followed his orders, but now they were capable of expressing opinions. Then, a second skeleton walked toward him. Bone 4 slammed his shield into the ground and pointed toward the shattered training dummies. Dong-hun stared at them, completely dumbfounded. After that, they started training with each other. Bone 4 held his shield in front of him while Bone 1 slashed with his sword, causing Bone 3 to join in. Noticing some arrows, Bone 4 quickly raised his shield above his head, blocking the attack. After watching them, Dong-hun let out a chuckle and said that it was pretty impressive. They continued training, and he thought that if Bone 4 could help with the training, he wouldn't need to buy any extra gear. He called out to Bone 2 and told him to try attacking him so he could test how safe the air shield was. Bone 5 used the air shield skill on him, and at the same time, Bone 2 attacked. Dong-hun reflexively covered his head with his hands, but the shield protected him. He staggered from the skeleton's blow and thought that it was not bad. He clapped his hands, attracting their attention, and told them to continue training, after which the skeletons took turns attacking each other, including him. While they were fighting, he thought with a smile that the training was going well. Then, suddenly, the system notified that the strength of Bone 1, 2, and 3 increased by 1. Bone 4's constitution increased by 1, and Bone 5's magic power increased by 1. Dong-hun was slightly surprised. The system congratulated him. Thanks to the first growth after awakening, the status window was unlocked. Bone 1's status window appeared in front of him, and he saw his stats and abilities. He only had a low-level second-level cut, and among his stats, only strength, technique, and constitution had high values. Dong-hun thought that since Bone 1 had this window, the others should have it too and checked them. Because of the training, Bone 1, 2, and 3's stats were different from Bone 4 and 5's. All his efforts so far weren't in vain. All he had to do was develop them all around, right? He looked at his skeletons and thought with a smile that he would develop their abilities so that they would become the strongest skeletons in the world. A week passed, and he finally went to work. Arriving at the gathering place, he took off the backpack on his back and looked at the contents, thinking that he had brought a sleeping bag and more than enough food for emergencies. He looked at the small crowd of hunters nearby and nervously walked towards them. After that, the guy from the guild asked the mercenaries to come to him and listen to his instructions. They should wait at the entrance of the dungeon, as they were planning to all enter at once. Dong-hun looked at the huge portal nearby and thought that the dungeon was very close to Po Station. There was a dim energy visible within a radius of 200 meters. The whole inside looked like a normal dungeon that appeared naturally. One of the mercenaries said that he was starting to get nervous, and his comrade agreed with him, saying that it looked like a high-difficulty dungeon. He heard that the thicker the color around the entrance, the higher the chance that the dungeon will be difficult. His buddy said that they were here with a guild, so nothing special would happen anyway. He just wanted to get this over with, go home, and eat some rice soup with soju. After listening to them, Dong-hun thought, do they think that they will be safe just because they are going with a big guild? This is just nonsense. There are many dungeons in this world, and countless hunters have disappeared in them. How many victims and deaths are overshadowed by the luxurious spotlights of the rankers? But still, he will go there and is going to put his life on the line. Risk everything. While he was thinking about this, a girl came up to him and called out to him, after which he immediately turned around but did not see anyone. At first, he thought that he imagined it, but suddenly her voice was heard from the other side again. She thoughtfully said that it was interesting. The energy she sensed was D rank and nothing more, but why does he have an E rank plate? And besides, he is a porter. Dong-hun looked around for the source of the voice and asked who she was. She asked in return, wasn't she the one who asked him about this first? Why did he hide his abilities from Parang and decide to participate as a porter? Dong-hun thought that there seemed to be some kind of misunderstanding. How did she even notice such details? But still, Parang is full of A-rank hunters. What difference does it make if he's a D or an E? He clenched his teeth nervously, and the girl said that looking at his expression, she was even more suspicious of him. Is he a spy who took acting classes? She took off her invisibility cloak and said that he was being too frivolous about Parang's intelligence capabilities. Does he think she won't notice that he's a spy sent from another guild? She appeared before him, and he was very surprised to see her gold plate, which is only given to S ranks and above. She is the same Dark Empress, Ji So-yeol, who ranks first among the 37 rankers of South Korea, vice leader of the Parang Guild, the only younger sister of Chaorang. Realizing who he met, he became even more nervous than before, and thought that with her unique ability to kill, she is the #1 person who should not be angered. Not to mention how scary she is. To think that he got the chance to interact with a ranker he admired. He excitedly called her Miss Ranker and said that she seemed to have misunderstood something. He is not a spy for another guild. He is only a D rank. If it is a rival guild to Parang, then it must be a big one. Why would they use a hunter like him? So Yeol's face darkened, and then she let out a chuckle and laughed out loud, apologizing to him. In fact, she was just joking. Dong-hun was shocked. He couldn't understand why someone of Ji So-yeol's status would play a prank on him. Was it just boredom? While everyone else stared at the Dark Empress, he became more nervous. Had she researched him? Of course, training skeletons could attract the attention of rankers, but was that really the reason? Still, this was a God-given opportunity to get noticed by a ranker. So Yeol noticed his nervousness and tilted her head. Was it because she had suddenly appeared? She bowed slightly and apologized if she had been rude. Then, with an awkward smile, she admitted that she had simply found it interesting that a porter with an E-rank badge could house 5 D-rank energies within him. Dong-hun thought about his 5 skeletons and remained silent. She wasn't wrong. Then, something clicked in his mind. She had detected his power using energy detection. So, Yeol smiled slightly and explained that her older brother had asked her to join the second team's expedition as a scout. She had been looking for a porter, and just then, a suspicious porter had appeared. Taking a step closer, she asked if he wanted to volunteer. It might be dangerous, but with skills like his, he should be more than capable, and he didn't seem like the type to run away. Dong-hun felt her piercing gaze. He forced a nervous smile and asked if she really thought so. She confirmed it, and placed her hand on his shoulder. She was very good at judging people. As for the reward, she promised him double the pay. Dong-hun's eyes widened. A dungeon expedition with a ranker, and double the reward? He couldn't let this opportunity slip away. The difficulty of dungeons ranged from E to S. Since this rank wasn't determined by the system, humanity had to create a method to classify them. In an interview, An S-rank hunter called White Shadow was asked how to determine a dungeon's rank in advance. Unfortunately, such methods didn't exist. They could only go inside and check for themselves. If he could give one piece of advice, it would be to check the brightness of the energy surrounding the dungeon. The darker it was, the higher the chance it was a high-tier dungeon. But even that wasn't always accurate. The association had to set a standard. If 5 or more hunters of the same rank failed to clear a dungeon, its rank would be raised. If 5 or more A-rank hunters attempted and failed, the dungeon would be classified as S-rank. But that method required sacrifices. The unranked dungeon Dong-hun was about to enter was one of those cases. But instead of sending their main force in first, they had dispatched a reconnaissance team. Thanks to that, he had the chance to experience the dungeon before the other mercenaries. After passing through the portal, Dong-hun and the others found themselves in a cave. He glanced at the glowing crystals along the walls. Fortunately, thanks to the luminescent pearls, they didn't have to worry about visibility. An archer pointed at the pearls and commented that they could sell for a decent amount of money. Another hunter scoffed, telling him to slow down. Did he not know how many hunters had died after carelessly touching dungeon items? Listening to their conversation, Dong-hun realized that the atmosphere had become too relaxed, but it wasn't surprising. Aside from So-yeol, who was an S-rank, everyone else carried an A-rank badge. So-yeol, however, wasn't as relaxed. She warned them not to let their guard down and ordered them to get ready. Swift Blade and Small Fire were to scout the area. They acknowledged the order and moved out. Then she turned to their guide, Kang Sun-wook. She told him to search for an exit and cover the porter. Sun-wook grinned. I knew you'd say that. Dong-hun thought the nickname was strange, but it was a title given by the system, a recognition of his exceptional ability to navigate dungeons. So Yeol took the lead. Let's move. As the team started moving, Sun-wook approached Dong-hun and asked with a smile, Are you nervous? Dong-hun hesitated before replying. It would be a lie to say I'm not. Sun-wook's grin widened. Good. Then you should stay nervous. Dong-hun was slightly taken aback. Sun-wook continued. There's more than one thing off about this dungeon. Do you think the Dark Empress, an S-rank, is just being cautious for no reason? Something's not right. This dungeon is too quiet. The structure is too simple. The probability of there being monsters is low. If something lived in this cave, we would at least hear sounds, feel vibrations, or sense movement. But there's nothing. That means something is hidden here. Dong-hun was impressed. His analysis was spot on. Couldn't you have said this before we entered? Sun-wook laughed. I've been doing this for years. He pointed toward a passage. Come on, let's find the exit. Dong-hun glanced back at the rest of the group. They were heading in the opposite direction. Still, everything should be fine. Separating from the main group, he followed Sun-wook as they searched for an exit. But suddenly, Sun-wook stopped. His expression hardened. He wiped sweat from his forehead and gritted his teeth. No traps, no clues. Something felt wrong. He turned to Dong-hun. Do you feel heavy? Dong-hun shivered. Goosebumps crawled up his arms. He hesitated before answering. Are we sure we should keep going? Sun-wook didn't answer immediately. I'm not sure. It's my first time feeling like this. Even meeting a ranker didn't make me feel this way. Dong-hun's stomach tightened. For the first time since entering, he felt truly anxious. Sun-wook's gaze drifted toward the dark corridor ahead. A suffocating presence leaked from it. Something is here. Something ridiculous. He turned to Dong-hun. Necromancer, summon your undead. If anything happens, at least you'll have a chance to survive. Dong-hun tightened his grip on his staff. Sun-wook's words made him uneasy. Taking no chances, he summoned all his skeletons at once, consuming his energy down to 50. Sun-wook glanced at them, puzzled. Is this all you've got? Dong-hun nodded. These are the only ones I can summon. Before Sun-wook could reply, a massive wave of energy rushed toward them. The sheer pressure forced their knees to buckle. Dong-hun called out to Sun-wook in alarm. Sun-wook cursed under his breath. Keep moving. There's an open area ahead. What difference does that make? I don't know, but I can sense multiple presences there. If something's living there, then this place is habitable, right? Dong-hun hesitated. Who exactly do you sense? I'm not sure. It could be the previous teams. It could be monsters. Just move. They pushed forward, but the pressure only grew stronger. Dong-hun clenched his jaw. His body felt heavy. His eyes blurred, his legs wobbled, and he nearly lost his balance. Then, Bone 5 activated Air Shield on him, but the moment the shield formed, it shattered instantly. Dong-hun was thrown backward, blood spurting from his mouth. Wiping the sweat from his face, he gasped for breath. He called out to Bone 1 and leaned on him for support, forcing himself to continue walking. The pressure was so overwhelming that it broke a skill the instant it was cast. Then, he noticed something. Sunwook was already far ahead. How? Does this even make sense? This dungeon had only recently appeared in Poo, yet it was super hard difficulty. Even rankers would struggle in a place like this. I want to live. I have to become a ranker. Taking a few more steps, he finally passed through an invisible barrier. Instantly, he felt the crushing pressure disappear. He gasped, taking in a deep breath. Then, the system sent a notification. He had reached the stage of an old man with white hair filled with deep resentment. Dong-hun frowned. What does that even mean? Another system message appeared. His resentment was so deep that frost was forming in his hair. Let him enter the room and defeat the old man. Dong-hun's eyes widened. The white-haired old man. That was the boss of this dungeon. Suddenly, a voice echoed from the shadows. Finally, someone has arrived. 3 hunters sat against a wall. Are you from the reinforcement team? Dong-hun narrowed his eyes. So these were the hunters who had escaped the crushing pressure and ended up here. Another hunter's gaze locked onto Sunwook's belt. He noticed the purple A-rank badge. Then, his eyes darted to the skeletons. You're from the rescue team. The hunters scrambled toward them. Please, get us out of here. Do you have food? Water? Sunwook exhaled, then turned to Dong-hun. Let's hand out the food first. Dong-hun took off his backpack and frowned. He was a little annoyed. These guys had abandoned their teammates to save themselves. But then again, that was just how dungeons worked. He pulled out some water bottles and snack bars, handing them out. As the hunters ate, he watched them carefully. One wrong decision, and I could have ended up like them. Sunwook leaned against the wall, smiling faintly. Eat slower. Then, he looked at the group. Now, tell me what happened here. One of the hunters raised his hand. I'll speak for the team. He held up a B-rank badge. Among the survivors, he was the highest rank. This place is pure hell. I've been hunting for years, but I've never seen a dungeon like this. Sunwook's eyes darkened. What's so strange about it? Look for yourself. There is no way out. Sunwook sighed. The hunter continued. From the moment we entered, no matter where we went, we always ended up back here. The cave is bound by some kind of aura. It won't let us escape. In the end, there's only one thing we can do. We have to go through that door. But the difficulty is insane. No one can beat the thing behind that door. An old man with white hair, full of deep resentment. He's completely insane. We tried everything. No matter what rank we were nothing but babies in front of him. But if you're an A rank, doesn't that mean you can pull us out of here? The hunters stared at him with desperate, hopeful eyes, but Sunwook didn't respond. Instead, Dong-hun narrowed his eyes. Something felt off. If the boss is so powerful, then why are you all still alive? The B-rank hunter hesitated. That's a good question. Surprisingly, the old man doesn't kill people. He just accepts challengers and puts them through some kind of test. A second hunter, Kong Jo, spoke up. I don't know the exact details, but all he does is beat us to a pulp. Then he clicks his tongue and mutters, not suitable. After that, he throws us out. Dong-hun stared at the door. A dungeon boss. That doesn't kill? What kind of dungeon is this? One of the hunters scratched his head in confusion. Now that I think about it, this whole thing is weird. The old man is still just a man, right? Which means he's human. Since the world changed, this is the first time a dungeon boss has been human. And that wraps up this recap. Let me know if you want me to continue this story or if you have any suggestions. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you in the next one.